At this point, we'd like to start the plenary session 2, entitled Starting Strong on the SDGs in Asia, Roles of Key Stakeholders. This session shall be moderated by President Hideyuki Mori of IJES. President Mori, please take the floor.
Your kind introduction. And this session is about SDGs. As already many speakers yesterday and today have mentioned, there were two very important international decisions last year. One was, of course, climate change related, Paris Agreement, but the other was the agreement upon 2030 development agenda, including Sustainable Development Goals, which in short is called SDGs. This is not so well known, but really important agreement. Countries all over the world have agreed last year. And therefore, in this session, we'd like to share with you how these SDGs could be implemented, in particular in developing countries in Asia, involving various stakeholders. That is the main focus of this session. And SDGs are goals set 15 years from now, to 2030. And therefore, and already implementation has started. And initial actions are therefore very important. We are going to share information about quick actions already taken and the kind of future actions necessary for the region. And in this session, we are going to have two presentations first, then to be followed by panel discussions. Let me first of all introduce our panelists and presenters. The person sitting next to me is Mr. Kabe Zahidi, Deputy Executive Secretary for Sustainable Development, United Nations Economic and Social Commission for Asia and Pacific, in short, UNSCAP. And next, sitting next to Kabe is Mr. Toshio Arima. He is board member of United Nations Global Compact and also the chairman of the board of Global Compact Network Japan. And then third person I'm going to introduce is Ms. Elenita Dano, in short, Neth. She is the Asia Director, Action Group on Erosion, Technology, and Concentration. She is also a member of United Nations 10-member group to support the technology facilitation mechanism. So, Neth. Then fourth person is Mr. Kunihiro Yamauchi. He is the Director General of Global Environment Department of JICA. So Yamauchi-san, please. And we have two presentations. These presentations will be made by Dr. Eric Dassman. He is the area leader of Integrated Policies and Sustainable Society area of IJES. And second presentation will be made by Ms. Dara Lee. She is a project officer of Asia-Europe Foundation, in short, ASEAN. So let us start. First, may I ask Eric to make your presentation. So Eric, please.
Okay, thank you very much, Mori-san. The title of my presentation is Starting Strong on the SDGs in Asia, Results of National Readiness Studies. This presentation reflects the collective efforts of many colleagues from my team as well as the Project Management Office. They're listed there. And the main argument that I'm going to advance in this presentation is that basically many of the countries within Asia have already taken a relatively quick and decisive start on these new 17 Sustainable Development Goals. As Mori-san mentioned, these goals were agreed upon in September of last year, and they will frame the development agenda from 2015 to 2030. Now, for some of you who might have been here last year, you might have seen that last year we published a book called Achieving the Sustainable Development Goals from Agenda to Action. And this was before countries actually started to move forward on the agenda. One of the key arguments that we advanced in that book is that governance, or the way that authority is exercised, is going to be extremely important for implementing the goals, and that the initial readiness conditions, or the initial steps that countries take to prepare for implementing the goals, is going to be crucial in determining how well we actually implement this agenda moving forward. And so what we've done this year in preparation for the ISAP is we've done a series of readiness studies looking at how several countries in Asia have prepared for implementing those goals. And if you go outside, you can sample or you can pick up some of the studies. We have studies on Philippines, on India, on Bhutan, and on Korea, as well as a framing paper. So without further ado, I'd like to give you just a brief overview of the approach that we looked at or used to analyze readiness. And basically what we did is, working with authors in each of these 4 countries mentioned previously, we asked them to take a look at what the National Development Planning Framework looks like and its relationship to the SDGs. We also asked them to take a look at the coherence or synergies and linkages between SDGs and national goals. And then we focused a lot of effort on trying to determine what the national implementation framework would look like. This includes the sort of main agency that would be responsible for implementing the SDGs, as well as awareness-raising activities and other characteristics of the policymaking process that were unique to the different countries. And then the 4th area is what we call means of implementation, or MOI. This includes financing, capacity, and technology. And then lastly, we asked them to comment on challenges and solutions for trying to implement the SDGs. And as I mentioned previously, what we found is across the 4 countries we sampled, that countries are moving very quickly. And I just want to highlight a few of these very quick actions and some of the unique things that we found in different countries. So for instance, in the paper on Bhutan, we found that Bhutan has already moved very quickly in setting up the SDGs within what they call their Gross National Happiness Commission. And this commission will handle policy coordination and also assessing the sustainability of actions. This is incredibly important for the SDGs because, as we'll talk about, I'm sure later, the SDGs are not only supposed to be separate goals, but they're supposed to be treated in an integrated manner, so coordination is incredibly important. We've also seen that there's been a significant amount of awareness-raising activities for civil servants and the public more generally. And we've also seen good synergies between the SDGs and some of the goals that are already listed in development plans. So for instance, there's 169 different targets for the SDGs. 134 of those targets are already covered by development plans in Bhutan. Now, to give you sort of a slightly different view, Bhutan is a country that has a population of approximately 800,000 people. India, and this is perhaps selling it very short, is much bigger. And in India, we also see, though, very strong initial actions. So for instance, we've seen the setup of the coordination activities by the newly appointed or newly named Planning Commission in India. This is what is known as the Niti Aayog, which you can see in this sign right over here. We've also seen that there's been the assignment of key SDGs to different line ministries. So, for instance, the SDG on health has been assigned to the health ministry, and they're now working with different targets to try to implement the SDGs. And we've also seen an emphasis on gathering indicators and capacity building. And one of the more interesting things that we see happen in India, perhaps because it is such a large country, is some of the state governments. India is a quasi-federal country, which means that some of the state governments are moving even faster than the national government. In the Philippines is an interesting case because many of the institutions and organizations that were already set up to deal with sustainable development in many previous sustainable development initiatives are now being reinvigorated to deal with the SDGs. So this includes the Sustainable Development Commission at the national level, but it also includes the National Economic Development Authority. So this is the Chief Planning Commission once again. And what we also see is very interesting in Philippines, that's outstanding, is an effort to earmark some of the budget so that there's strong coherence between outlays of public funding and achievement of some of the SDGs. So once again, India is moving forward Philippines is moving forward very quickly on the SDGs. And then the fourth country that we looked at was once again very different in character. So this is South Korea, the one developed country that we looked at. Now the important point to emphasize here is that the SDGs, in contrast to the MDGs, which came before them, are supposed to be applied to developed and developing countries. And so we'll also talk a little bit more, I'm sure, in the panel discussion about how developed countries are moving forward. And what we've seen in South Korea is a challenge, I think, that's going to be present in many developed countries. That is to try to deal with the SDGs both as an international agenda, something that it's trying to work on through its bilateral aid programs, but also as a domestic agenda. And what Korea has in place from previous sustainability initiatives, what is known as these local councils for sustainable development. These are cooperations between civil society as well as local governments. And now, while we traditionally sort of think of Korea in terms of sort of a top-down type of governance system, what we suggest in the case study that we look at is actually the SDGs might be driven in a more bottom-up type of fashion. Now, as we can see from this chart right here, I'm not going to go into the details due to time issues, but in many of the areas that we looked at, there's already been significant amount of activity in terms of the SDGs, setting up implementation arrangements, finding coherence between SDGs and national goals. The one sort of challenging area, which we can see also in this chart, is going to be in terms of financing and other means of implementation. Some countries have moved forward on this, but some countries still need to think very carefully about this. And also the international community is going to have to help with this, and I'm sure we'll have more of this type of dialogue as we move forward. The other things I'd like to point out are sort of overall key messages. So, as I suggested previously, governments need a quick and decisive start on the SDGs. The current 15 years is not a long period of time, and we're concerned that if we don't get a really good start, that you might get this condition called lock-in, where the different institutions and interests that are not interested in the SDGs work together to sort of stand in the way of the agenda. What we've also found is that in many cases, starting from scratch is unnecessary. In many of the countries, there's already set up institutions and planning frameworks that can deal with this new agenda, and they're actually already working very actively to kickstart things and move things forward. Lastly, I want to sort of close with highlighting 4 areas that we think need additional attention moving forward. And those 4 areas are integrated planning and improved policy coherence, enhanced capacity to mobilize and deploy financial resources, as mentioned previously, more and better data, that's easily available to all to track progress and ensure accountability, and then strengthen capacity to form multi-stakeholder partnerships. This agenda should not only be implemented by governments, but it's going to be implemented by multiple stakeholders working together with each other. And I just want to highlight a few areas that IGES is working on to deal with some of these need areas. So in terms of integration and partnerships, colleagues in our green economy area are now looking at the linkages between different SDGs and how you might be able to achieve multiple SDGs by, for instance, in this case, this number 51 represents the sustainable energy for all. By enhancing access to energy, you can also improve or deal with poverty issues. You can also deal with climate change issues. And to give a sort of more concrete illustration of how we're doing this on the ground, in my own group, we're working with colleagues and communities in Cambodia to make sure that women can deal with climate change more effectively. We're working more on climate change mitigation so that women can get more access to climate change finance. And so we try to build linkages between the gender goal, the climate change goal, and the energy goal. And we do this in a way that when the climate finance comes in, it can also lead to more jobs, for instance, in this case, in marketing and selling clean cook stoves. The other area that I want to highlight is the data and funding. You can see right here that we have 3 different bars. The bars refer to the percentage of indicators for the different types of SDGs that are considered Tier 3 indicators. This is where we don't have so much data. And you can see clearly right here that in terms of environment, that's the area where we have the least amount of data. So this is the area we need to attack and deal with very proactively. And just to highlight some work that some of the colleagues have done in a city that we've worked in, and a way to try to gather some of this data. This is a picture, when I initially looked at this picture, I thought this was a picture of the new Star Wars movie. It is not. It is actually a picture of the city of Bandung, and it's a picture of a room in Bandung called the Command Center, where they're actively getting data on transport and urban issues, and using that data to improve governance. And so what I'm suggesting is to gather some of this data, we need to work in ways that take advantage of new technology, but also to take advantage of the actions and movements of people on the ground, and sort of building bridges between sort of the social drivers and sort of the technological innovation can be one way to strengthen our data. Last but not least, I just want to highlight the future work we're doing on SDGs, and you can talk to me or my colleagues later about this. We're now trying to do capacity building for governments and other stakeholders on SDGs, continuing our governance research by looking at the readiness conditions in other countries, and last but not least, colleagues in our green economy area are doing work on gathering indicators and looking at some of the linkages I showed previously. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Eric. And therefore, Eric and his team has looked at 4 countries for their readiness to implement SDGs. And major findings are countries have already started early actions in various degrees. And perhaps also like India and Korea, they have also some subnational actions together with national actions. And a few challenges nevertheless exist in terms of funding, data collection, and others. When it comes to data, environment data collection and analysis is the biggest challenge. Thank you, Eric, for your presentation. Then may I ask Dana to make your presentation.
Thank you, Mori-san, and thank you to IGES for the invitation to speak here today. My name is Dara Lee, and I am from the Asia-Europe Foundation, ASAP, specifically in the platform called the Asia-Europe Environment Forum. I'm excited to share with you the insights we have gained with regards to national readiness for SDGs in Asia through the capacity building workshops we have organized in the region. To begin with a brief introduction about ASAP, or the Asia-Europe Foundation. It is an intergovernmental, not-for-profit organization based in Singapore. It is the only permanent established institution of the ASEM process and is funded and supported by the 53 ASEM member states. ASAP's mandate is to promote understanding and exchange between Asia and Europe, and we organize projects to achieve these goals. And finally, we are proud to say that in 18 years, we've implemented 700 projects with about 750 partners, benefiting more than 20,000 active participants. One platform that ASAP is actively engaged in is the Asia-Europe Environment Forum, ENV Forum, a partnership of a number of institutions working in sustainable development, one of which is our host for this conference, IGES. The ENV Forum has supported the SDGs process since 2013, launching a program to support policymakers in understanding SDGs and preparing for their implementation and monitoring. In this endeavor, we have conducted research related to the SDGs and organized a number of capacity building workshops, as you can see there in the green arrow, bringing together national policymakers, notably from Southeast Asia, as well as development experts from Asia and Europe. Cooperating together with partner organizations in various countries in the region, we have worked with ASEAN member states, particularly with Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar, and Vietnam, in supporting the implementation of SDGs in these countries. Regardless of the national context, our key message in these workshops has always been that countries should take the lead in implementing the SDGs, which are designed to respect countries' priorities, capacities, and situations. In previous years, these workshops tended to focus on raising awareness on SDGs, as well as an introduction to the more practical matters of SDG implementation, including financing, monitoring, and governance. Our workshops provided a platform for policymakers from government to get started with mapping existing national policies to the global SDGs with the support of international experts to assess the alignments in these areas. Now, with the adoption of the SDGs in September 2015, our workshops have become a bit more technical over the past year, developing from policy mapping exercises to sharing national experiences and conducting needs assessments for tailoring SDGs to the national context. In doing so, we ultimately hope to support countries as they prepare their implementation and monitoring frameworks for SDGs. The methodologies that we have taken in our capacity building workshops and in previous research projects are outlined in our upcoming publication, Implementation Guide for the SDGs, which are designed to support policymakers in getting started with implementing the SDGs. It includes a step-by-step guidance in national SDG implementation and a final section on country case studies to illustrate how selected ASEM countries have gotten started with the SDGs. The guidance and the case studies that are presented in this publication were researched in close consultation with development experts and government officials involved in our workshops. So, where are countries in Asia with regards to their national preparedness in SDGs? Broadly speaking, with regards to the institutional frameworks, most countries have begun and even completed mapping existing national policies to the SDGs. So for example, Cambodia has mapped policy alignment with the SDGs with regards to its rectangular strategy, national strategic development plan, and relevant sectoral action plans. This mapping is designed to lead into the tailoring of the SDGs and their targets into specific national contexts. So Indonesia, for example, has selected 119 of the targets to include in its development plan that correspond to all 17 of the SDGs. Some countries are also planning possible custom SDGs, so for example, Cambodian SDGs, CSDGs, with the inclusion of a goal on demining and UXO to complete the unfinished work from the MDG era. Interagency and multi-stakeholder platforms are also created to conduct these initial steps in consultation with the relevant actors. So as Eric mentioned, NIDA is very active in this area, working with civil society, academia, and all levels of government to map alignment with the SDG indicators. Indonesia, too, has worked to ensure that its lead agency and SDG implementation, Bappenas, is working with different levels of government, private sector, academia. So we've discussed that one of the key principles of the SDGs is to leave no one behind. And countries have taken this call seriously in establishing stronger monitoring mechanisms to track the attainment of SDGs in all levels of society and geographic location. Countries have made progress in mapping existing national indicators to the global SDG indicators, of which there are 231 unique. For example, Lao PDR has found that 45% of the 156 indicators in its national socioeconomic development plan are linked to the global SDG indicators, and discussions are underway to identify and integrate new indicators from the global SDG indicator list. Some countries are also in the midst of conducting assessments on data availability, especially with regards to their ability to disaggregate or separate data by sex, age, ethnicity, and other classifications. Myanmar, for example, has mapped out the global SDG indicators and has applied readiness criteria to each indicator with regards to data availability, clarity on indicator methodology, and applicability to Myanmar's context. Moving past this step, a few countries have also assigned agencies that will be responsible for gathering and synthesizing data for certain indicators. Vietnam and Philippines, for example, have both assigned indicators to relevant agencies and line ministries and general statistics offices. Philippines in particular is considering working with non-state actors to build opportunities in new data sources, such as big data with the private sector and community-level data with CSOs. Though significant progress has been made, common challenges include, firstly, acquiring reliable and timely funding support, especially as a number of countries in Southeast Asia graduate to lower middle income status. Governments are recognizing the limitations of relying on international public finance and are considering other avenues for resource mobilization. Challenges in the implementation and monitoring front persist in terms of political commitment for environmental protection and away from unbridled growth, as well as limited technical and resource capacity for data analysis and collection, especially considering the high level of data disaggregation that is required for the SDGs. In terms of national level coordination, mechanisms for cooperation between agencies and sectors have been set up, but coordination in overcoming competing interests remains a challenge. Lastly, our capacity building workshops provide an opportunity for South-South exchange on matters related to the SDGs, but we can see that differences in the level of expertise is large, across and within countries, which makes such exchange often one-sided. And each of our workshops concludes with a needs assessment for capacity building and resources for SDG implementation. And from our latest regional workshop just last month, most needs were related actually to support for monitoring and evaluation frameworks, so the SDG indicators. And other needs included technology transfer, human resource development in thematic experts and statisticians, and opportunities for resource mobilization. Policymakers were also eager to participate in further platforms for international and regional exchange based on best practices for SDG implementation, which leads me to my final slide on the ENV Forum's upcoming work with regards to SDGs. We'll be holding a conference on SDG delivery in Stockholm later this year in October for policymakers from ASEM countries to gather to exchange experiences related to SDGs. And a final version of our implementation guide will be released around this time, and a draft of this publication is available at the foyer. So I'd be glad to hear your feedback and on its contents for its finalization. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dara. Introducing already very important activities ASEM has started. And for your information, ASEM is Asia, Europe and Asia platform where countries in Europe and Asia get together to discuss various issues, including sustainability issues, and therefore including SDGs. And ISAP has been a partner for ASEM since its establishment. And we are very proud that ASEM, its operational environmental arm is Environment Forum, has started already very important capacity building activities for a few countries in Asia. And let me just mention a couple of points she has raised. For example, the capacity building is quite important means of one of the important means of implementation, and definitely developing countries in Asia need capacity to implement SDGs. And she mentioned in terms of capacity readiness, this is readiness support is therefore very important, and ASEM is doing that. And also she mentioned the need to collect data. And she used the word in her presentation, data disaggregation. Eric, in the previous presentation, made a point clear that data for environment is lacking, very weak compared to social and economic data. But also, now she mentioned, data need to be disaggregated. That means not only general environment data, environmental data in relation to, for example, gender and others. More disaggregated data are needed to implement SDGs in a proper way. So having said that, thank you very much. Very informative two presentations. Then, based upon these presentations, we are going to start panel discussions. First, I'm going to ask each one of the panelists the early actions they have already taken, and also their priorities and basic approach to start implementing SDGs. May I ask first, Kabe, for your brief introduction of UNESCAP approach to SDG implementation.
Thank you, Mori-san, and thank you to the presenters for two excellent presentations. So, my institution, the Economic and Social Commission for Asia Pacific, UNESCAP, as you said, we've engaged fast in this readiness process. But Mori-san, if you permit me, I think we need to take just one small step backwards, because for you to understand what we're doing as an institution, it's important to understand that this new agenda is fundamentally different to any previous agenda that has existed. This is the most ambitious development agenda that the world, that the leaders have ever set themselves. And it's not one that can be successful using the old ways of working. Because as the presenters previously said, it is universal, it is extraordinarily integrated, which means it can't just be run through the existing sectoral ministries and the way that our institutions and businesses may be set up. That's the first thing. The second thing is that an integral part of this new agenda is leaving no one behind. It's a very simple phrase, but it is extraordinarily fundamental, because we're sitting in a region where inequality is increasing. 1.5 billion people are trapped in poverty. 80% of the people of Asia Pacific don't have access to affordable health care. We have the fastest aging populations, and yet only about 30% receive pensions. We have about 60% of the world's youth, and yet about 18 million of our children don't have first-grade education. So in this region, leaving no one behind is going to be extraordinarily difficult as a starting point. And so what we require, and this is where I come to what ESCAP is working on, are fundamental transformations. This was actually a subject of a report that ESCAP developed in partnership with IGES, UNU, and UNEP. Looking at transformations for sustainable development. And the transformations that this report identifies are in essence the underpinning of the work that we do at UNESCAP. The first is we need transformations in the way that resources are used. So we have rising affluence, we have changing lifestyles, we have population growth, we have growing middle classes. All of this leads to extraordinary pressure on natural resources. And so the first transformation is this decoupling of the way we use resources from development. So we cannot continue to use the same resources. And on top of that, in Asia Pacific, not in Japan, but in Asia Pacific as a whole, we're about 3 to 5 times more inefficient than the rest of the world. So it takes us about 3 to 5 times more resources to produce the same dollar of output than in the rest of the world. So it's very important to decouple from an economic point of view as well as an environmental point of view in reaching the SDGs. The second is transformation in really the economic models, because what we've seen, especially in our region, is that economic growth alone is insufficient to deal with the rising inequalities, the aging populations, the environmental degradation, the climate change, natural disasters, etc. So we need to replace the sort of the growth-centric development with people-centric development. And that's a second focus of the kind of work that we do at ESCAP. The third one is transformation and financing. The first two presenters rightly pointed to money as an important element. But it's not just about public funding. This is not about development aid. This is about the rules and incentives governing financing and financial markets, which so far disadvantage long-term investments, disadvantage investments from a sustainable perspective. In other words, we need to align finance with the Sustainable Development Goals. And right now, we don't have the rules that drive the markets in the right direction. We're beginning to see shoots of improvement, green bonds, etc., but not quite there yet. And the fourth is transformations in partnerships and alliances. And Mori-san, this is again one of the I guess, focuses of this meeting here, in that the Sustainable Development Goals are not goals for governments to implement. These are goals that need to be internalized by all institutions, by the private sector, and extraordinary partnerships of action need to be built around them to be successful. At SCAP, we've begun this. We have an annual Asia-Pacific Forum on Sustainable Development, which brings together multiple actors, and Ned might touch on this in a moment as well. And the point is for the actors to get together and share the experiences that we saw from the presenters. In other words, who is doing what, how are they overcoming the data challenges, how are they overcoming the financial challenges, how are they moving forward on the SDGs. So I see the colleague waving at me that the time is over. Let me leave that as my first introductory comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kabe, pointing out essential elements for SDGs. It is really advocating transformation of the society. And when it comes to sustainability, decoupling and development of a new business model could be the very essential part of this initiative. When it comes to funding, you mentioned different kind of funding mechanisms need to be developed, including perhaps green bond and others. And lastly, quite important point he has mentioned is SDGs are not only for government, but also for all stakeholders, for all of us. Thank you very much. And let me ask one particular question. We understand UNSCAP has developed a partnership with very important organizations like ADB and UNDP. And could you just elaborate on this partnership and meaning? Important implications for Asian countries.
Yes, as I mentioned in my last point, these partnerships are going to be fundamental. As part of our sort of SCAP starting strong on the implementation of the SDGs, if I can put it that way, there are two elements that we focused on. One is what's called follow-up and review. In other words, working with countries to be able to do exactly that, to assess their progress on implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals. And the second one is on data and statistics. There is a lot of missing information to be able to even set the baseline for where we are. 17 goals, 169 targets, 231 indicators. They can be further adjusted for the national needs, but this is a massive change from the kind of data and information that was needed. So the partnership, Mori-san, that we've built with ADB and UNDP is primarily built around an annual stocktaking of where are our countries. How are the Asia-Pacific countries progressing in meeting and matching and implementing the Sustainable Development Goals? Of course, in addition to that, you're bringing together SCAP, which has probably the convening power that's unparalleled in the region, that we bring together, in essence, what is the Parliament of Asia-Pacific, or the closest thing there is to the Parliament of Asia-Pacific, on the one hand, with the sort of the national footprint of a UNDP and the financial clout of an ADB. And of course, this could be a very powerful combination for sparking change in many countries and in many circumstances. So that's the partnership that we have built with UNDP and ADB. But it's only one of many partnerships. We have a similar partnership with ASEAN, to try to do the same but more at the sub-regional level. And that's why I was particularly interested in what the last speaker had to say, because the ASEAN Secretariat and the ASEAN community has come to us to help them with the follow-up and review, this annual stock-taking, the sharing of experiences and building up the statistical and data capacities. And of course, in doing that, we very much hope to maintain our partnership with the likes of IGES and the others we've been working with, like UNU, on the report.
Thank you very much. 次に有馬さんから。
Next, from Mr. Arima, about SDGs. If you would like to elaborate on the approaches. Well, thank you for your kind of introduction. And I would like, before I speak about the early actions, I would like to speak a little bit about the United Nations Global Compact. The UN Global Compact is mainly done by the United Nations, the private sector, and mainly the going concerns to propel forward the SDGs. Basically, in other words, is this progressing the and promoting the CSR and corporate social responsibility. And this was established in year 2000. And background of it is that there was a Davos conference in 1990, and Mr. Kofi Annan, who was the Director General, made a very touching speech. And after the end of the Cold War in 1990s, in the global environment, there's been the child labor and destruction of the environment were quite prevalent. And at the same time, the economy grew worldwide. And so in Davos, for the economic community or the business community, Mr. Kofi Annan made the very important suggestion, and so as to build the healthy society. So he said, let's make a global market with the human face on it. And in year 2000, the global UN Global Compact was organized. And I gather this was in July in 2000. And 2 months later, in September 2000, MDGs were agreed. And the Millennium Development Goals were agreed. And so basically the Global Compact had been developed with the same spirit as the Millennium Development Goals. And what mobilizes this Global Compact is the local network reside in 80 different countries, including Japan and Asian countries. And these are the drivers. This network is the driver of the Global Compact. And Global Japan was organized in 2003. And in 2008, we tried to make it so that this network, Japan Network, will be led more by the companies, and we have more than 250 companies and organizations which are the members of this Japan Network. And I myself are board members. I'm one of the 30 board members of the Global Compact, and 15 come from the corporations, 50 from others, and the top of this organization is the Director General Ban Ki-moon, and I am also head of the Japan network. And with this as a backdrop, with regards to the early actions, I would like to elaborate on the early actions. To be honest, I cannot really say that we have done anything concrete. And Rio, in 2012, following the Rio Plus 20, this post 2015, basically kicked off the formation of the SDGs, and we have been, this UN Global Compact has been involved in this as well. And since about last year, we have been focusing our efforts more on the building awareness of SDGs across the society. And so we have been working to disseminate the ideas of SDGs, utilizing different social venues. And also we assisted the media people to understand the SDGs so that so as to solicit their support. And we have been conducting this study meeting, SDGs study sessions, and we are having increasing number of participants. And also we use the different venues such as G7 summit meetings. In the stage of preparation, we made the presentation to the relevant people with the NGOs. And so also we are involved in every theme of the SDGs. And we have a SDGs subcommittee, and it has the largest number of membership. More than 80 people joined this subcommittee. And it's a problem to find a big enough meeting room. And in fact, this demonstrates the high level of interest in this topic. And we also run the questionnaires, and this is a questionnaire answered or filled in by the member companies, and majority of the companies have some level of awareness about the SDGs. They have their own interpretation, but when it comes to the concrete actions, so the 17 items of the SDGs, how the corporations will link their CSR activities to the 17 goals and 169 targets is something that they're working on right now, and that it'll be a next step for them to put those ideas in action in the framework of the corporate social responsibility activities. But there are some advanced companies that are working with the UN Global Compact and the GRI, which is called the Compass. This is a very effective guidebook, and we translated this into Japanese with IGES, and we disseminate this across the Japanese companies. And some of the companies have already incorporated the Compass into their business plan. And so there are some companies like that, and such initiatives have already begun. And so if such activities become even more vigorous, then I believe that the corporate involvement in the SDGs implementation will be further enhanced. And also, there's six industry matrix by UNGC, the Global Compact, and meaning that the corporations, including the SMEs, and so there's a detailed instruction on what can be done by companies, and this is a very good reference document for companies. And so that is the current situation. That's my report for the current status. Thank you very much.
You talked about the history behind the Global Compact. Thank you very much for letting us know about the history. Now, as was mentioned, before SDGs, we had MDGs, the Millennium Development Goals, which was adopted within the UN in the year 2000. I'm sure some of you know that there could be one of the goals have been to reduce the poverty in the entire world by half. And this initiative got ended in 2015, and SDGs were considered to be something that would replace MDGs. And then at the same time, about the Global Compact, this was established in the July 2000, and this was driven by Secretary General Kofi Annan back then. And for the UN, this was a very important initiative. And since then, the United Nations have been working on the formation of global partnership. This has been their major goal in implementing their activities, and they have been forming the global partnership with the stakeholders. And one of the contributing factors behind that was the United Nations Compact, or UNGC. One more thing.
最後の方で、
Toward the end, you talked about UNGC working hand in hand with the SDG Compass. This was also a wonderful document, and we had the honor of translating it into Japanese together with them. The main message here is that in implementing SDGs, it is important to incorporate that into the core business of the enterprises. In other words, the SDGs should be considered as a business opportunity. So in that respect, this is quite surprising. We use the term mainstreaming. So streaming of SDGs within the corporations was written in Compass. And also based on Compass, some of the Japanese enterprises have already introduced that aspect of the philosophy into their management plans. So this is quite encouraging. Could you tell us a bit about this? So what do you think about the future perspective of this getting into the management plans? Well, the companies and corporations would get into to introduce this kind of concept into the midterm plan, and every 3 years or so they introduce the midterm plan. So it's dependent on the timing. So some of the companies have been working on the incorporation of this idea into their midterm management plan, and we have interviewed some of them. And the first step would be to understand the processes of Compass. So the understanding the priority is of the essence. And please note that this is quite flexible. It is easy for the enterprises to incorporate that into what they do. So what they have to do is to prioritize what they do, and then after that, they connect that into 17 goals of SDGs. That's the kind of feedback we are receiving. And one more thing that is also very important is that on the back side of the first page, the message of Kofi Annan, the former Secretary General, is shown. This is the short and simple, but very strong. And the enterprises would play a major role in this very important endeavor. That is written on the back side of the first page. So they could be the group companies, and top management of the group companies would have discussions. And then this message of the Kofi Annan was very impactful. So the people would understand. That explains then people would understand how they are able to do that in their own company. So that's what would take place in the future. Thank you very much.
To introduce early actions we have taken and basic approaches.
ありがとうございます、Mori-san. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mori.
My organization, the Action Group on Erosion, Technology and Concentration, is an international organization with headquarters in Canada, but we have offices in Mexico City and the Philippines, in Mindanao, in Davao, where I am based. And we are mainly working on research, advocacy, and monitoring of developments on agricultural biodiversity, food and agriculture governance, and new and emerging technologies. our main involvement in the implementation, also monitoring of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, under which the SDGs come in, mainly comes into the technology fold, which I will talk about. The etc. group, ETC group, is an active member, a core group member of the Asia-Pacific Regional CSO Engagement Mechanism, which has been engaging SCAP, as mentioned by Kave earlier, on various aspects, on the pre-implementation, implementation, and yes, review and follow-up of the SDGs. And I will talk about that in a while. And my organization and myself, in particular, is actually involved as well in the global level, in the UN Secretary General's multi-stakeholder 10-member group that supports the implementation of the SDGs under the Technology Facilitation Mechanism, which is actually a support mechanism for science, technology, and innovations for the implementation of the SDGs. And this is actually the two streams where etc. group, ETC group, engages proactively and has been engaged in early actions on the implementation of the SDGs since 2012. We have to remind ourselves that the mother document of the SDG is actually the the Rio Plus 20 document that came out from that summit in Rio in 2012. And that document actually put on paper the commitment of member states to adopt a sustainable development goal and also associated actions to support the implementation of that ambitious goal, as Kave has put it. It has in it all the package on means of implementation, including financing for development and, yes, technology, which we have been involved in from the beginning. And our involvement on the early actions and proactive engagement on the SDG are actually at the global, regional, and also at the national level. And I will actually emphasize 3 points, 3 reflections coming from our involvement in early actions pertaining to the implementation of the SDG. One, as Kave mentioned, the SDG is really revolutionary in many ways. And there is no way we can implement it and we can pursue this revolutionary commitment of member states of the international community by doing business as usual. It has to be revolutionary action as well. We have to think out of the box to be able to implement and deliver these ambitious goals, all 17. And first, we should not look at it as individual goals and cherry pick on what particular goals we want to implement. As Kave mentioned, they are integrated, and we should not forget as well the means of implementation to support the implementation of these goals, which are indivisible. They come together. And for us working on technology, we realized it earlier on that just working on technology will not bring us anywhere in contributing to the implementation of the SDGs. Like, we need to link arms with other civil society, with other major groups and stakeholders, and with governments and even business to be able to put forward towards implementation this commitment of the international community. So working together with others, working across the goals is very important, not just on a particular goal. The second reflection that I'd like to put forward is that many civil society are actually working at the national and local level in respective goals, often in 1, 2, or even 3 goals at the national level, but there are actually a lot of avenues for us to be able to work with others who are working on the 16 or 15 other goals. And we realize that there are unexplored areas and spaces where we can work together. And through the Asia-Pacific Regional CSO Engagement Mechanism, we identified regional engagement in monitoring and ensuring accountability of governments at the regional level on the implementation of the 2030 Agenda. This actually brought us to a proactive engagement with SCAP that started in 2013 and actually maturing in the process of the 3rd year of the Asia-Pacific Forum for Sustainable Development, which SCAP has initiated. As mentioned by Kave, it's actually a mechanism, a platform for multi-stakeholder discussion, deliberation, and partnership to advance the Sustainable Development Goals. The third reflection that I'd like to share is that in working on the Sustainable Development Goals, we have to really open our minds in working beyond our respective sectors. And even non-traditional sectors. In working on the technology front, for example, has brought us to the area where we are working closely with the scientific and academic community, with business and industry, and also with other parts of civil society whom we have had no relationship with before, and also closer working relations with member states. The technology facilitation mechanism that has been set up under the 2030 agenda that was adopted by member states in September has been very clear from the beginning that it's a multi-stakeholder mechanism to allow for discussions, deliberations, and ensuring facilitation of genuine transfer of environmentally sound technologies, and also bringing in non-traditional sources of knowledge and innovation, not just coming from the academia and the scientific community, but local innovations, traditional knowledge, and indigenous knowledge as well, are actually part of the diverse sources of knowledge that we need to support the implementation of the SDGs. So it may not just be high-tech, but as pointed out by the UN Secretary General in the Science and Technology and Innovation Forum in New York on June 6 and 7, he actually said that we may not need high technology to be able to deliver the SDGs. In fact, most of these technologies may already be existing in communities, that we may have to tap local innovations and traditional and indigenous knowledge to be able to advance the SDGs and make these technologies matter in the lives of communities. And lastly, I'd like to also emphasize that in moving forward in engaging the SDGs, it's important for us not to forget the means of implementation that are necessary to advance this. I think in the presentation of both Eric and Dara emphasized that in the needs assessment, that countries have emphasized the need for support, not just on finance, but technology and capacity building, which are often forgotten. When we discussed each of the goals, let's bear in mind that each of the goals actually comes with very specific means of implementation and an overall means of implementation that was adopted in Addis Ababa in July 2015, which includes capacity building, partnerships, and finance and technology. So engaging in each of these means of implementation is not also a cherry-picking exercise. Member states, particularly developing countries, have emphasized during the negotiations process that this means of implementation come as a package, that they are indivisible, which means you cannot separate one from the rest. So you have to look at them as one together. So I would like to end by the way I start, calling on everyone to think out of the box and follow the tone that the SDGs have set, that it's a revolutionary way of moving forward, particularly in a context where we are actually confronting multiple crises, not just climate crisis, but development and environmental crisis as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nes, for your very positive note on SDGs. So SDG is revolutionary. That's really important message. And may I ask one question for you? In the process of developing SDGs, voices of CSOs all over the world have been very much reflected. Therefore, your voices have been reflected in setting agenda, as it were. But now we are talking about implementation or follow-up or monitoring. What kind of role CSOs could play in implementation and the monitoring of SDGs?
Thank you. For us, it's been very clear from the start that the strength that CSOs are bringing, civil society organizations are bringing into the SDG engagement is our strength in implementing the goals. And many of us have been engaged in implementation of each of these goals or respective goals for the past 2-3 decades, no? You have a lot of NGOs involved in implementation of goals related to water, to energy, to sanitation. But then here comes the 2030 agenda, bringing in a framework that challenges each of us to work together, to look at our engagement in respective goals in a more holistic, comprehensive, and integrated way. The agenda actually provides a framework for us to work together, that there is no way for us to be able to attain the goal of leaving no one behind if we will not work together. Like doing individually good things in water will not deliver you the 2030 agenda. You have to work together with others working in other sectors. And another thing that's important there is really bringing in national and local experiences that civil society have gained across countries, across communities, to higher level of engagement. At the regional level, the Asia-Pacific Forum on Sustainable Development, initiated by SCAP, where the RSEM has been working very closely, is actually looking at this as the mechanism to bring up and to learn from experiences at the national and local level implementation of the SDGs, and ultimately to bring that up in New York through the high-level political forum and contribute concretely in monitoring and ensuring accountability of member states. We have to bear in mind that it is challenging to be involved in monitoring, follow-up, and review, and ensuring accountability if you are not involved in implementation. There's nothing to monitor if you are not involved in implementation. And I think this is the one of the biggest strengths of RSEM. The Regional CSO Engagement Mechanism is actually comprised of more than 400 civil society organizations working across Asia-Pacific, at different levels, at the local and national level. And the way we've organized ourselves to ensure that it's going to be bottom-up approach, that we'll be bringing up experiences from the local, national level to the regional and the global engagement, is to organize ourselves beyond the 9 major groups, but into 17 constituencies that are not, or that are beyond the 9 major groups, including migrant constituencies, which are very important in this region, the constituencies of the persons with disabilities, also those who are in the LGBT, the community, which are non-traditional groups, but are increasingly very vocal and very much involved in many development issues in these regions, are actually captured in the way the constituencies are organized under RSEM. So we are bringing this as strength into the APFSD, coming from our experiences of many decades of implementation.
Thank you very much. Next, we'd like to invite Yamauchi-san to share with us basic approaches and early action JICA has taken.
Thank you very much, Ms. Mori. I'm from JICA. JICA is the bilateral aid agencies to aim at the achieving sustainable development in developing countries in cooperation with the multi-stakeholders, including the government and communities and the donor agencies and civil society. By addressing the global agenda and reducing poverty through equitable growth, improving governance, and achieving human security. I'd like to touch upon the human security. This is a key. Okay, it's Japanese. The human, people are confronted with a variety of threats, including for fear, such as a conflict, just environment degradation, and so on. And also wants, including the poverty, malnutrition, and lack of social services. And given the interdependence of this situation, sudden shock and threats place people at great risk in the face of downturn. Human security refers to safeguarding of people's freedom from fear and want, ensuring that they can live in safety and dignity. According to the final report of Commission on Human Security, co-chaired by Sadako Ogata and Amaracha Sen, human security means to protect the vital core of all human lives in ways that enhance human freedoms and human fulfillment. And to realize human security, there are four approaches: people-centered and comprehensive and context-specific, considering each situation, and prevention-oriented. These are all consistent with the SDGs approach as well. Now, the principles of human security are reflected in the SDGs. Achieving human security is one of the missions of JICA. To that end, JICA practices the following four practical policies: comprehensively address freedom from fear and want, place special emphasis on benefiting the society, socially vulnerable, aim to achieve both protection and capacity development, and address global risks and cross-border issues. In recent years, problems resulting from climate change as well as environmental problems are posing threats to people. The importance of human security also seems to be increasing from the environmental aspect. Meanwhile, in our vision raised by the SDGs, they set out such guiding principles as being centered on people and ensuring that no one will be left behind. This reflects some of the principles of human security, a concept that Japan has been advocating in the international communities. Thus, environmental and human security are highly consistent. Through its effort to realize human security, JICA will also contribute to the international community in achieving the SDGs. JICA will place strategic emphasis on those sectors where Japan's experience and expertise can be put to good use to meet the partner countries. Now, from environmental point of view, the SDGs are in fact a continuation of Agenda 2021, the plan of action adopted at UNCTAD in 1992. The Agenda 21 emphasized the need to shift our economic activities to something that allows to conserve environmental resources necessary for social development and to ensure economic development at the same time. The SDG spirit is extended to help hands to everybody in poverty, conflict, and all the other harsh conditions, and to eliminate all sorts of discrimination. Having said that, now what we have done, I'd like to explain a bit about what we have done. Oops. Okay. Now, I understand that the sustainable development goals now stress the quality of growth more than ever. I therefore attach importance to three key aspects of development cooperation in addressing global issues. The three aspects are inclusiveness, that ensures the fruit of growth are shared with society as a whole, leaving no one behind. Sustainability over generations in terms of both consideration of environmental and social development. And third, resiliency, that makes it possible to adequately withstand natural disasters, economic crisis, and other shocks. Now let me share with you some of the good practice of JICA and global issues from these three aspects. Now, inclusiveness. JICA has been working on an initiative aimed at changing the world from forests. Forests have diverse range of functions, including the prevention of floods and landslides, as well as absorbing carbon dioxide as a major greenhouse gas. However, the world is seeing 13 million hectares of forest disappearing every year due to the mass consumption of resources and large-scale development. The area is equivalent to 1/3 of Japan's land. To stop deforestation is a viable option to address climate change. REDD Plus is doing just that. RED stands for reducing greenhouse gases emissions from deforestation and forest degradation. JICA is implementing RED Plus in many countries in Asia. In Japan, JICA and Forestry and Forest Products Research Institute jointly launched the Japan Public-Private Platform for RED Plus. This platform involving the participation of business and NGOs interested in RED works on the information sharing and business promotion related to RED. Efforts are being made to create mechanisms that will help local people living on forest resources to gain economic self-sufficiency and allow the local community to manage those resources. This initiative is a typical example of successfully achieving the involvement of diverse stakeholders and distributing the output among the local people. This initiative concerns the goal 15. Now it comes to sustainability. Major cities in Asia have been undergoing a population concentration. And as one of these negative externalities, facing the challenge of how to manage solid waste and waste water. During its period of rapid economic growth, Japan faced the same challenge and overcame it. Take solid waste, for example. Japan pursued energy and resource saving, reuse, and recycling. In other words, Japan was already exercising what we have now called the 3 R's: reduce, reuse, recycle. This experience, as well as the expertise involved, can provide a solution to the urban problems in Asia today. Through technical cooperation, JICA works with Japanese business and local governments to promote systems for 3R activities, support the collection, transport, and separation of recyclables, transfer recycling technologies, and assist with the logistics recycled goods in many Asian countries. Among such efforts, JICA's partners, for example, Shibuya City, Kagoshima Prefecture, which has achieved the highest recycling rate, about 75% in Japan for 8 years in a row. So 3R initiative is a typical example of seeking a sustainable economy. The initiative concerns goal 12. Now, resiliency. Recent years have seen more frequent and intensive natural disasters in many countries across the world. The resultant economic losses are on rise year by year. In a society vulnerable to natural disasters, once the disaster strikes, growth opportunities may be lost, tapping people in a vicious cycle of poverty. And in disaster risk reduction, JICA has focused on all 4 phases of disaster management cycle: prevention and mitigation, preparedness, response, and recovery and reconstruction. Last year we had UN World Conference on Disaster Risk Reduction in Sendai, and we agreed that the conference adopted the Sendai framework for disaster risk reduction for 2015 to 2030, aiming at to reduce the deaths and economic losses. So now, a Sendai framework incorporated JICA's long-term DRR principle, including prior investment in DRR, a greater role of the central government, and Build Back Better concept. Now, this is a picture shows the Bangladesh examples. This country is hit by cyclones and floods every year. JICA has provided assistance in such forms as the establishment of nationwide flood forecasting and warning system, the construction of cyclone shelters at 120 locations, and development of disaster risk reduction human resources. Such assistance, coupled with effort by the government of Bangladesh, has resulted in a drop in the number of people affected by cyclones from 300,000 in 1970 to 4,000 in 2007. JICA's disaster risk reduction initiative is a typical example of seeking resilient society. This initiative concerns Goal 1, 11, and 13. And to scale up the outcome, the global partnership and stakeholder participation is inevitable. JICA's roles and strengths rest in developing many good practices that embrace inclusiveness, sustainability, and resiliency. Also of importance is to learn from other stakeholders good practice and coordinate with them when extending assistance. Such good practice can be shared with, disseminated among the wider stakeholders, including other Asian countries, business, NGOs, and donor community as a whole. I believe this approach will advance the world one step closer to achieving the SDGs. This is what we have done, and based on what we have done, and we'll now preparing the strategies for SDGs. And then we had a conference attended by country directors, all country directors in April, and we'll reviewed, and we are now making strategies to achieve SDGs, aligned with the national goals in each country. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Indeed, this concept of human security is very much along with basic messages of SDGs, putting people in the middle of the development. And having listened to your presentation, I've got the impression that now it's not only social issues, but resilience and sustainability issues are all included in SDGs. And therefore, quite many operations of JICA are one way or another related to SDGs. And therefore, my question to you, a quick question, is have you already set up a kind of internal mechanism to promote SDGs in an integrated manner within JICA?
Yes, we had a special task team to incorporate all efforts in our institution, and it's an interdepartmental collaboration is necessary. So we have started, and we also look at what they have done in each partner countries. Like it differs from each countries. The presentation shows that the needs is different and the preparedness is different. So we have to carefully take it into account, and then we will help the partner countries to promote sustainable development goals.
Thank you very much. And we have another round in that I'm going to ask each one of the panelists how to promote engagement of stakeholders. It is obvious that without having true partnership with key stakeholders, SDGs can never be achieved. And therefore, I'm going to ask first, SCAP, Kabe, about what kind of mechanisms have you already set up to promote engagement of key stakeholders?
Thank you, Mori-san. I guess, it goes without saying that a multi-stakeholder approach is needed. But sometimes when we talk about stakeholders, people hear a very narrow version of it. So for me, a fundamental stakeholder are the national statistics offices, for example. We just heard from the previous presentations the lack of data, the need for data to actually know where we stand and be able to measure where we're going towards, right? So that's a fundamental stakeholder, as far as I'm concerned, are the national statistics offices. And SCAP engages with them. We run capacity building programs to see where are the data gaps, how can data be raised for these 231 indicators that are needed. We have here in Japan the Statistical Institute for Asia Pacific that focuses specifically on helping build the capacity of these national statistics offices. So that's a fundamental stakeholder. There's a second stakeholder from the SCAP point of view that's fundamental, which is the UN itself. So as UN, we are also doing what the countries are doing to realign all of our processes. I mean, we weren't set up to implement such an ambitious and integrated agenda either in the same way. So at SCAP, we have strengthened what's called the Regional Coordination Mechanism, where we bring together 33 UN agencies based in Bangkok in terms of their regional presence, so that we have a bit more of a coordinated approach to helping countries with whatever they might need to be doing. We have a specific group actually dedicated to working on data and statistics, for example, within that coordination mechanism. So that's a second important stakeholder group. A third important stakeholder group is governments themselves. And for them, obviously, SCAP has traditionally been the platform that brings them together. We have, as you know, committees. We have a transport committee, we have an energy committee, we have the statistics committee, we have the science and technology committee, the information and communication technology. And what we're doing is reorienting every single one of these committees where countries are represented by the Ministry of Energy or the Ministry of Science and Technology, reorienting every single one of these to talk about and put in place action plans to deliver on the SDGs. So we have the platform and we're entirely reorienting that, as well as setting up the new platforms like the Asia-Pacific Forum on Sustainable Development or the platform Financing for Development that brings another key stakeholder, which is the Ministries of Finance and the central banks, to look at how to change the rules of finance to align private finance better with the investments that are needed. So these, for me, are all fundamental stakeholders. And of course, beyond that, you have what you would traditionally put in the stakeholders, which is the CSOs. And Ned talked about one mechanism we have, which is, a work in progress, I would say. We need even more involvement and even more implementation, as she said, through those groups. And then we have business. And here I have to admit that on the SCAP side, we do have a platform that brings together business, but I don't think it's yet fit for purpose of delivering on this extraordinary agenda. And it was very interesting to hear about the Global Compact and the moves here to internalize sustainability into each and every company. We traditionally always said, from the UN perspective, that the timelines of businesses are too short. You're always planning for 1 year, and you cannot deliver sustainability or make a case for sustainability in 1 year. And I think companies are now expanding their time horizon. So that's another important stakeholder that we have begun our engagement with. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Definitely, you have identified new stakeholders, like statistics office. That's really new to us. And because basically goals and targets are set in quantitative terms, and follow-up is very, very important by collecting data and analyzing data to ensure the progress made. And for that purpose, the role to be played by statistics office is very important. Thank you. Definitely, that is quite critical part. And also, towards the end, you have mentioned the importance to work with business and CSOs. And the mechanism you have for business is still a bit weak. Thank you very much.
Work in progress, I said.
Work in progress, okay. And, okay. So, 次に有馬さん。
So let's go to Mr. Arima next. We just heard from Kabe about the importance of partnership with business. And in that context, from your business person's perspective, the time frame tends to be, would you agree that time frame is inclined to be quite short, a year or so? And that may not be enough. That is probably not enough to address SDGs. So in that context, from a business person, in order for business to be involved in SDGs on a longer perspective, and also to work with a body entity like SCAP in Asia on a longer term perspective. Well, how do you see that can be achieved? I would like to raise 2 points, 2 perspectives. So one is collaboration with other entities as Global Compact. As I said, there are 3 layers. One is the United Nations Global Compact layer or level, which means UNGC itself already has 13,000 plus members. It is recognized as the world's largest CSO. And there are also several platforms as well, not just a single platform, but it is actually several platforms. I think this is in itself a platform for partnership. Now we turn to the Japan network. Japan network is working on several initiatives to that end. One is to partner with academia. We already have a network for working with academia already working or already in progress. Another is working with social entrepreneurs, consultants, people with or entities with research capabilities. We are working to partner with research capabilities out there. And also, thirdly, I should mention collaboration with collaborative efforts with NGOs. There is an organization or platform called Japan Platform that I'm involved in as well, mostly focusing on emergency assistance, for example, assisting refugees in South Sudan, but also evacuees, helping evacuees from typhoons, how to be prepared to help evacuees of natural disasters. And when an emergency assistance center is set up, the evacuees must go there on their own. And it's possible for companies, business, to be involved at a certain point to help the evacuees, possibly generating employment, that is assistance beyond providing relief or emergency packages. So Global Compact, the Japan Network, and Japan Platform, with involvement of MOFA, Ministry of Foreign Affairs officials, and we've been discussing already how to work together. Another point from a business perspective, and in that context, I would like to actually cite a case study, a specific case study. This was addressed by Donna as well previously. She said we don't really need high tech. The technology doesn't have to be that high tech. I would like to cite, in that context, Fuji Xerox, a case study of Fuji Xerox. There is a poverty-ridden area in the Philippines. People who live in poverty has been partners in a poverty reduction program. And what we found out is that there's a lack of textbooks, that there aren't enough textbooks to go around. To keep a long story short, a certain textbook publisher provided textbook material content to us, tailored to the Philippines, and we had a printer involved who would print the materials, and then we partnered with local NGOs to deliver the textbook, the printed textbooks, to students, to children. We had to, of course, identify the children who would need, school-age children who would need the textbook, and we solicited funds from companies who are interested. Fuji Xerox acted as a coordinator, as a facilitator, and the textbooks which were published, printed, will deliver to the NGO to deliver on the ground to the children. That's a typical example of how companies work together with other entities. Another case study involves Vietnamese, Thailand, meaning companies in Vietnamese and Thailand. It's small grassroots. Indonesia as well. It's a small grassroots endeavor that is expanding, and there's no high tech involved. More empathy than high tech, I would say. And once there's a proper business process that's set up, then it doesn't have to be high tech. Thank you very much for that. And with respect to the last case study that you mentioned, that there can be collaboration without high tech, I think that's very encouraging. That's a great example.
Your main focus, one of the main focuses, is technology transfer and dissemination. And Arima-san and Dara have mentioned perhaps not really advanced technologies, but more indigenous and the usual technologies are also very useful in meeting SDGs. Could you share with us your thought about technology aspect of SDGs?
Yeah, technology is actually an orphan issue for a long time in the discussion on sustainable development. People tend to discuss technology apart from sustainable development, not thinking that many of the solutions that are adopted even by communities, also at the national level, promoted by governments are actually technological in nature. They are not the panacea or the ultimate solution, but they are part of the mix of solutions. And as you mentioned, as I stressed earlier, there are numerous examples of how indigenous local innovations and traditional knowledge have actually managed to deliver development goals at the local level, especially. And to me, the new aspect that has been brought into this discussion in the 2030 agenda that governments have agreed to in Addis Ababa and also earlier in Rio +20 was really bringing technology to its right place, which is at the core of the discussion of means of implementation. Because we cannot discuss financing for development as is. You have to use money for something. Yeah, like money will not bring you water as it is, no? Like you have to need money to produce something, right? And oftentimes technology is part of that mix, and we often miss that. And there's also this detachment on the part of sustainable development practitioners from technology as a whole. And there are very few NGOs engaging in technology, in fact, especially at the advocacy, global and regional level. Because we have seen technology as an ivory tower issue, that it's an issue only for the scientists and the academics and even business to discuss. And civil society has no room in it, which is really a myth. Because many of the solutions that communities are engaged in, like you talk about clean cook stoves, you talk about pedal pumps, are actually promoted. And some of them were actually innovated on by local NGOs. Like the whole, game-changing technology of A-frames, for example, in farming in slopey areas was actually introduced by church-based NGOs. In the Philippines, I could cite hundreds of examples of that. And I think the introduction of the technology facilitation mechanism at the global level, bringing it in the center of the 2030 agenda and as a part of the means of implementation, actually ensures coherence in technological areas to support the SDGs. That there is now a mechanism at the global level that facilitates the exchange of information, sharing of knowledge, sharing of innovation among different stakeholders, among governments, and matchmaking of ideas. And the technology facilitation mechanism ensures this by conducting annual Science, Technology, and Innovation Forum, which is initially in New York, but ultimately will be brought to developing countries, annually. There's also, as Kaveh mentioned, the UN as stakeholders. There's actually an interagency task team that ensures that different parts of the UN engaged in technology transfer will work as one and deliver as one, fit for purpose, and ensuring that there is multi-stakeholder engagement by putting the 10-member group in place and ensuring that there are different interfaces at the national, regional, and global level. So it's been a product of very controversial and very bitter debate among government, among member states. No? Technology has been bitterly debated across the UN for many years. And it was really a breakthrough when they adopted the technology facilitation mechanism last year, initially to discuss all this and provide the mechanism for exchange, sharing of ideas, and bringing up local experiences that have made the difference in people's lives across countries, and making sure that other countries and other communities know about that and be able to access this knowledge and learn from these experiences.
Thank you very much. As Ness has mentioned briefly, this technology issue has been very much harshly debated internationally. And when the meeting in Addis Ababa has come to a conclusion that a technology facilitation mechanism need to be established. And it's established. And Ness is a member of this technology facilitation group. And could you, therefore, Ness, share with us concrete plan to promote technology facilitation mechanism? Is it already resolved or have come to conclusion yet? Or just share with us.
Yes, it's already in place, as we mentioned a number of times. And there are already pieces of it, elements of it that are put in place. The first Science, Technology, and Innovation Forum was held in New York in early June. But before that, there are actually parts of the UN that have been trying to initiate the process, like SCAP, for example. Even before the Science, Technology, and Innovation Forum in June, actually had a session on science, technology, and innovations in Asia-Pacific during the APFSD, the Asia-Pacific Forum for Sustainable Development, in March this year. And we're hoping that that's going to be institutionalized in the APFSD, that science, technology, and innovations discussion will be part of that whole discussion on sustainable development and be able to provide the platform to exchange experiences and also to enable partnerships among different sectors. I'd like to emphasize that crucial in the success of the technology facilitation mechanism is ensuring that it will not end as a buying and selling mechanism of technologies. Member states have made that very clear, that it's not going to be another platform in the UN to ensure that technologies, corporate-led or corporate innovations, will be sold to developing countries. That's not the intent. The intent is really to match the needs, like what Dara was explaining earlier, needs of countries, of communities with existing technologies, which may not be in the hands of corporations, which may not be high-tech, but existing, accessible, affordable technologies that are present in other countries that may need to be upscaled through the technology facilitation mechanism.
Okay.
Those are already in place.
Okay, thank you very much. That's a really important message. For technologies, therefore, we need to have true partnerships, okay? Meeting the needs of developing countries. Next, Yamauchi-san, the question I'd like to address to you is how JICA is going to work with multilateral arrangement, like the one SCAP has established. How, therefore, JICA is going to collaborate with these multilateral institutions?
Yes, we have several opportunities to work with the international communities. And of course, we work with the UN organizations and World Bank and the Asian Development Bank to promote dialogue and cooperation in many sectors, and we will set up the goals together, and then try to achieve it from each activities in the institutions. So we have such opportunities to work with. And in addition to the donor communities, we have opportunities to work with the private sectors. And I earlier mentioned we have the opportunity to work in the area of reduce, for example, greenhouse emissions in developing countries. Then, for example, joint crediting mechanism, Japan to achieve its goals of reducing greenhouse emission gases. For example, JICA has been assisting Indonesia with institution building and human resource development for promotion of JCM. And another opportunities was the civil society. We have quarterly meeting with NGOs, and we will see what we can do together. And research institutions as well. Will promote the research cooperation with Japanese universities and then institutions and counterparts in partner countries. So science and technology research partnership for sustainable development. So these kind of opportunities we will take and work together.
Okay, thank you very much. Since time is very limited, we have briefly covered the issue of partnership and also means of implementation as well. And we have about 12 minutes to take questions or suggestions from the floor. And therefore, could you raise your hand if you have questions or suggestions? Okay, over there, the gentleman over there. And the second one.
では2つ目の
Okay. Second one over there. The lady. Just the lady raising hand there. The second question. And third question there. Okay. So we take 3 questions. Okay, please.
Thank you very much for excellent presentation and panel discussion. My name is Shibata from JICA. My question is not for my boss, and my question is about how to transform our way of work, meaning that especially we work usually sector by sector, and my responsibility is environmental management and working for waste management, air pollution, wastewater treatment, etc., etc. But the panelists, for example, Erenita, Ms. Dano mentioned that we should work trespassing sector. We cannot cherry picking, and we work together with other sector. But when I work in my organization, usually it's very difficult when we should set up a strategy for a specific SDG. We work in department.
Could you make questions very short?
Okay. So we work usually sector by sector. I'd like to give us a concrete example of co-work between multi-sector and multi-stakeholder. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next question over there.
Thank you. My name is Sakika Fukuda-Par, from professor at the New School in New York. There's been a lot of emphasis on the importance of data and indicators for monitoring. This is a sort of a double-edged sword, because there is a tendency to cherish what you can measure rather than measure what you can cherish. And one of the challenges is technology. So my question goes to Elenita and to Mr. Zahari. This is one of the most difficult areas for measurement. And in fact, many of the indicators that have been proposed for monitoring technology access, innovation, pretty silly, actually, if I may say so. I mean, it's like the number of internet nodes or something like telephones, portable telephones, etc., which are indicators that do not really reflect the intent of the goal and the target to expand innovation and use of effective technologies that you need. So is this really a constraint? Is this something you can go around? Is this something that you will need to work on? What are your thoughts about that?
Okay, thank you very much. Next question, the last question, perhaps somewhere in the middle.
Thank you very much for your presentation. My name is Kikuko Sakai, doctor in marine science. And I would like to ask two female speakers. And firstly, Ms. Dadari, I would like to know about some detail of the collaboration between Europe and Asia. So could you tell us about a little bit more about the European partners, and also how to set for the two female speakers about the SDG goals. So it's very global goals. So how to set the criteria of to implement your programs and project, and also for the Madam Ms. Elenita Dano, I would like to ask you about how to grow the female scientists and engineers. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. Basically, we have 3 questions. First one, how to promote real integrated, approach. That's the first one. And second one, danger of too much dependent on measurement, quantitative measurement. Third one, Europe-Asia collaboration, and gender aspect. Okay, let me start with Kabe.
Okay, thank you very much. Maybe I'll try to answer some. The question about transformation is of course is an important one. We have to be aware that, in essence, through the Sustainable Development Goals, we are asking countries to work in a different way across sectors. So if we can't demonstrate that in our own institutions, it's going to be very difficult for us to advocate for that when we're working with countries. Of course, there are very concrete examples. The work on air pollution and climate change is a very concrete example. For some countries, the work on climate change really starts off with air pollution. The whole process of decarbonization, which the Paris Climate Agreement is advocating, for many countries is starting off through air pollution, through the air pollution lens in terms of reducing coal-fired power plants, etc. So there are these success stories. Energy access is another one that Eric pointed out too. We see some countries actually approach education through the lens of energy access, because there's clear evidence that energy access, especially enabling children to read at night after dark, improves education levels and maintains children in school. So you can achieve the goal of education through a very different goal, which is energy access, which also meets renewable energy targets. So I think there are plenty of these multiple benefit goals. And I'll leave it there.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I may ask then Annette a question about danger of using data too much.
Yes, that's a really very interesting question. The 10-member group is actually confronted by that because, like, technology, as I said, is a new kid on the block in the Sustainable Development Goal discussion. And there are actually different facets of technology that needs to be captured by data. Because when you're talking of technology, it's not just hard technology, but the soft technology. the capacity, skills which are harder to measure. And the whole discussion about disaggregation of data comes into fore. Because if we're talking of the SDGs and multiple SDGs coming into fore on the technology discussion, we'll have to capture how does technology matter for women, for example. When you talk about environmentally sound technologies for energy, like number of cook stoves and used by women, which are harder to capture in statistics. But there are discussions that have been going on this. It's a new area for us, and I really appreciate the question. And I would say that when we discuss technology and measuring technology, let's not just be trapped by the hard and soft as well, but by the linkage of technology to the other 17 goals, like technology in agriculture and biodiversity and energy, etc. And ensure that when you measure these goals, you have to bring in the technology aspects of how they come into play at the national and local level. The last question that I'd like to answer, and also to add to that, there's also one aspect of technology that is important to capture, which is a challenge for statisticians. How do you capture that environmentally sound technologies are delivered? Since there is no way, there is actually not a definition in the UN what are environmentally sound technologies. That's why the technology facilitation mechanism is pushing for assessment of technologies, that there has to be some guide for countries. What kinds of technologies do you accept? Like you have $10 million, do you accept any kind of technologies? So guidance for that and to be able to capture that in statistics is crucial. The last question is on the role of women in science and technology. This is really a bothersome question because it is not just an issue for developing countries, but for developed countries as well, where women, young girls, or young women are actually a minority in the science, technology, engineering, and mathematics area. And this is another goal that is actually included in one of the SDGs that the statistics have to capture.
Okay, thank you. Then Yamauchi-san, could you add perhaps if you have views on this data aspect, could you just let us know how JICA is going to address this data issue?
Yes, usually when we plan the projects, we will decide what kind of baseline data is necessary, and we will review it and monitor and evaluate in the final stage. And the post-evaluation will look at those indicators. Those kind of indicators are included in the SDGs. But the others, maybe I totally agreed, we need a guidance or the, even say, translation of indicators on the ground. So that indicators for even for Japan, only 40 or 30% can cover. Even the developing countries, it's impossible. It's very difficult. It's not impossible. So probably the indicator is very important, but too much elaboration on the indicators maybe we may be off the right track. This is my personal opinion.
Thank you very much. それで最後に有馬さんから最初。
Last but not least, to Mr. Arima, regarding the first question, JICA and international agencies are divided by sectors. So an integrated approach would be a challenge for the public sector, because the public sector is compartmentalized. But the business world does not necessarily face that constraint. I think it's quite possible for business to integrate, to implement integrated approach. Due to lack of time, let me keep it simple. Of the many sectors and many stakeholders that need to work together, one thing that binds them is a large-scale vision. In my mind, there has to be an overarching vision to put everyone together. There's 17 SDGs, and with a motto under the slogan of "No one left behind. But what world are we trying to create under that goal, under these goals and that slogan? Where is the world heading to? That vision has to be defined in a concrete manner, and everyone can agree to that vision. Then I think linkages would be born as well. Mr. Kofi Annan said we want to create a global market with a human face. That's, I think, possibly an overarching vision, a great idea, really. If we can all walk towards that, I think naturally linkages would emerge.
And as you have already noticed, SDGs are such a big agenda, and a lot of challenges we have in front of us. With this very limited amount of time, only 2 hours, we cannot discuss all the important aspects of SDGs, but at least we believe we have some stimulus to you to start thinking about how we together could implement SDGs in this country and also in Asia and in the world. And we are going to, IGES is going to follow up on this issue from now on, of course, and therefore we are going to keep yourself informed about the progress on SDGs from now on until 2030. And thank you very much listening to this panel discussion in this way. And please give us a big hand to for panelists. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much to Mr. Mori as well as to all the panelists. At this time,